Okay, welcome back. We just had an incredible conversation with regard to production. Now we're moving on to filming for eco impact with three filmmakers. One is en route, stuck in traffic. He should be here any minute. And we're very grateful again to the university for such a special location. So Eric, take it away. We're very excited to have you moderating.
Thank you. Thank you all for coming out this morning for this conversation. My name is Eric Pierson. I'm on the faculty here at the University of San Diego. I'm also the director of the Film Studies minor, which is a program that's about 4 years old here at USD. What I'd like to do is we're going to take about 45 minutes to have a dialogue with the guest here. And then hopefully that'll spark some questions on your part, and then we'll have an opportunity for you to ask those questions. So, with that in mind, one of the first things I just wanted to do was the term filming for eco impact. It was a new term for me. I didn't quite sort of understand what that meant. So what I decided to do was to let the filmmakers introduce themselves, introduce their film, and help us to define this term sort of collectively. We're at a bit of a disadvantage because none of the films have screened yet that are going to be here, so I want to encourage the panelists to let us know when their film is going to screen so people can get out and see it. So with that, I will start with Tanisha.
Hello, everybody. There we go. Hi, my name is Tanisha Devjani. I am the Impact and Outreach Coordinator for Turtle Walker. Thank you so much for having me here today. It's a lovely day, so excited to have a conversation and get to know each other better. Like Eric mentioned, we do not have our film screened yet, but it is tomorrow at 2:30, and I will tell you a little bit about the film just so you have an idea what I'm yapping on about. So Turtle Walker is a film about Satish Bhaskar, who is an incredible man from India who we lovingly call Mr. Sea Turtle. He walked 2/3 or more of the Indian coastline doing turtle conservation and doing all the foundational research for our country. And yeah, it's a film about him. Now it's shot when he was in his 70s and is looking back on his entire journey as a conservationist. And he pays one last visit to his beloved turtles 2 decades after this entire story takes place. So that's a little bit about the film. I'll let you introduce yourself before we start talking about eco-impact.
Check, check. Okay, wonderful. Thank you for having me and for being here today, of course. It's always nice to speak when people are listening. My name is John Hunter Nolan. I go by Hunter. I directed, produced, and was the director of photography for a feature-length documentary called Unearth that screens this evening at 6:30. I am originally from Maine, but the film took place in the other corner, up in Alaska. Unearth was sparked when 2 commercial fishermen and brothers called me and shared with me about this project called the Pebble Mine. The Pebble Mine is a proposed copper, gold, and molybdenum mine. If you ever want a tongue twister, just go ahead and try the word molybdenum. It's an interesting one. Hello, Ben. So, all good? And so Unearth it's a feature-length documentary that dives into mining, because this prospective mine was this copper and gold and molybdenum deposit was discovered at the headwaters of Bristol Bay. Bristol Bay is the largest salmon ecosystem and healthiest salmon ecosystem currently on the planet. At the same time, this deposit of metals would be North America's largest open pit mine. So you clearly have 2 different sets of stakeholders that are very interested in success in both directions. So in Unearth, 2 brothers, the commercial salmon fishermen, they set out into North America to learn how is mining happening, where is it happening, why is it happening, in the places that it has happened. What are the promises that were made? What were the promises that were kept? What were the promises that were broken? Meanwhile, two Native Alaskan sisters named Christina and Alexandra, the heartbeat of the film, they have their own unique way of pushing back and fighting to protect what it is that is so important to them, being their home. So Unearth kind of unpacks this dynamic between what we all, anyone who's got an iPhone is holding a product that is a result of mining, these lights, the copper that gives us electricity, et cetera. But at the same time, just because these things are super useful doesn't necessarily mean we should do it anywhere, anytime, without consultation of those who stand to be impacted the most. So I make films because I'm better with a camera than I am with my words. So I hope you come see the film and don't take my word for it.
So, Ben, I had asked the other panelists to introduce themselves, let us know when their film is screening, because your film hasn't screened yet. And then we're going to get into the question of filming for eco-impact. What exactly does that mean? I think you have a mic in your chair.
Check, check.
There we go.
Check. Good morning, my name is Ben Galland. I'm from San Francisco. My film is called Ripples of Change. It's very similar to Unearth in the sense that it's about mining and about fisheries. And then I also get in as well with the local people, the indigenous people of that area, the Tolowa tribe and the Yurok tribe on the Klamath and Smith River in Northern California. My film will be screening tomorrow morning, I think at 9 a.m. Kind of early on a Saturday, but hopefully y'all come out and check it out.
Cool. So we're here to talk about filming for eco-impact. So what does that mean to you all exactly when you hear that term? Because it's a fairly new term, but if we can try to sort of put our arms around it a little bit, then move our conversation from there. So.
Does anyone want to go first? Okay. Specifically with regard to filming, when I think of eco-impact, there's a few things that come to mind. I definitely think one big part of that is the story we're talking about, the message we're trying to send out, which I think all of our films have in common. We are trying to talk about certain marine issues and spark connection with viewers and really encourage them to learn more about these issues, make change. And I think that is one part of it, is the story we're trying to send out. I do think the other part is also the impact campaigns or strategies that we're able to do while filming. For example, Turtle Walker's impact campaign has been running 5 years now, while the film has been being made for 7 years. So that means just leveraging the resources that are available to us to really try and solve the issues that we're talking about in the film, working with nonprofits on the ground level to solve those issues. For example, if we are talking about threats to, in my case, marine habitats and turtles, we created a marine mammal stranding response network where we have, first responders and veterinary services. We conduct trainings to make sure that people on the ground level have the training needed to respond to these marine animals. But yeah, long story short, I think the message we're sending out, in addition to the impact that we are trying to have as a film.
You want to add to that?
Sure. Documentary is a medium. It's a specific type of film, of course, and our job as documentary filmmakers is to tell stories. And when you add, this concept of eco or enviro, impact to it, I think that something that is consistently true for me is in the films that I enjoy making are ones where you take complex problems, you live them for 2, 3, 5, 7 years. You work based on a genuine curiosity that you would like to better understand that problem, and then you take all that time, all that energy, and you wrap that into 90 minutes. Not only 90 minutes where someone is informed, but 90 minutes where, or in the instance of a feature film, 90 minutes where someone is also entertained. I think that a principle that's important to me in the process is, how do I make a film that invites people to care? I find that to be impactful. How do I make a film that invites people to care that don't already care? Not to say that I don't also want to make a film that people who already care find to be effective, entertaining, and informative. But when it comes to dissecting some of these issues that we face, I think it's important that's where the word impact comes in. Eco, I think we know what eco stands for, but for me, impact is it comes from inviting people, whether they're technically, quote unquote, on the other side of an issue right now. I think there's I feel a responsibility to try to use film as an opportunity to build bridges rather than define divides. Because if I want to be impactful, I think it's important that we use story to invite. So for me, that's what eco impact means, is bringing people into the conversation who might otherwise feel like it's too daunting or it's too complex before watching the film.
Ben, anything you want to add to that?
It's so much amazing stuff. I really appreciate that. I guess story, to your point there, I chose to use the vehicle of fly fishing as the story because I know there's a huge audience in that, and there's a ton of conservation films out there, and they're all very important, but I was just trying to think of another way to invite another group, sort of entice them into this, and then as we dive into this journey between these old school anglers, we unpack the issues that are threatening this one specific fishery. So as a filmmaker, yes, definitely. Somehow focusing on characters, you did that really well, as you did. And hopefully that comes across in my film. My films are short. Both of these films are feature length. Mine's only 15 minutes, so not enough time to develop a real connection to a story, like a arc. You know, your characters went through a lot through the process of your film. Mine's just these guys on an adventure, and then we go and we hang out with the tribes and meet with environmental groups, and then get into it that way. So, but yeah, definitely building bridges, that speaks to that for sure. A lot of people, anglers in particular, if they just want to go and have fun and connect with nature, but there's a clip in my film, it's about 1 minute long, and it's kind of funny. One of the anglers I interviewed, he said, fly fishing is a gateway drug to conservation, because you go to this place to catch this magical, elusive steelhead or salmon, and then you're like checking your phone, learning about the flows, and now you're becoming an amateur hydrologist, right? And then you're on the river and you're seeing what kind of food they eat, then you're becoming an amateur entomologist. And through that process, you establish this deeper connection to the river in that place. And it's once you really care about something and have a connection with it that you're really motivated to make change. So yeah, I think that's what it's all about, building bridges.
I'll just add to that. I mean, I think that the 15 minutes, 5 minutes, 90 minutes, it all has that opportunity to invite someone to experience, feel a place that realistically, you know, I probably will never make it to that stretch of river, but maybe I will. I shouldn't say that too early, but if in creating film and creating story, you can transport someone there for that moment. You know, the bigger the screen, the further you transport. There's no question about that. So you put some of these stories, these characters, these moments, these, you know, this magic. You know, that's the beauty of filmmaking. Is, you know, I think we had 2,000 hours worth of footage, and we made a 90-minute movie out of that. So that's like a 0.0 or a 0.5%, success rate of every minute of film I shot. So, you get to curate in that way that impact it's a broad word for a specific thing per film, but I think that's part of the mystique for us as filmmakers is that we get to guide you, and you get to choose whether or not you'd like to go on that journey with us.
Right. So you talked about, and you both talked about sort of the people that you meet when you're in this process. Can you talk about how so there's these individuals who are sort of actively participating, but there's these bigger sort of conversations. And if we're talking about sort of impact, can you talk about during the filming process what was going on outside of the world of the film that either impacted what you were going to do or you felt like expanded the conversation that you wanted to have with people?
You want to take it first?
Go ahead.
So let me just restate the question. While filming, what occurred or how did what's actually unfolding external to the production itself that informed the production itself? Yes. Well, Unearth has some highs and it's got some lows. And for a film, that's a great thing. For a community experiencing those highs and lows, that really stinks. We, over the course of 4 years of production, we came into this story because it looked like the Pebble Mine would be built. And I don't want to give away too much here, but simply put, when you discover $600 billion worth of copper and gold in the ground, there's a group of people that have what they believe the right legally to attain that, to get that out of the ground, that are very incentivized to do anything and everything that they possibly can in order to get that. When you have then a community of 70 people whose heritage reaches back 6,000 to 10,000 years in this one specific area, and then you've got a region that is reliant upon the health of this ecosystem, you've also got a group of people who feel as though they've got a right to have and protect what they find to be sacred. So that's the baseline for Unearth. And I jumped into the story in 2019 when it looked very much so like that mine was going to happen. There are some moments where, for us in 2020, an environmental undercover agency, investigative agency called EIA, Environmental Investigative Agency, they did an undercover sting with the executives from that company, where they finally captured on tape what everybody already knew. Two of my characters in the film, the two sisters, they said, we weren't surprised at what they said, we were surprised that it got captured. And when you have, in the process of filming, these confirmations or these pullbacks in progress, frankly, it's helpful because you're feeling as though the story is evolving, but simultaneously, it's a fine line for, should I keep filming? This person is really distraught right now. And that's really, I think, when you get to the end of a process of filming, you carry this responsibility of story. You're like, wow, I just lived that with you for 3 years. I feel, never mind my goals of making a documentary, I need to do your story justice that you just let me in on. So I think as the plot thickens for the characters, the plot thickens for the filmmakers, and I think when that happens, the responsibility elevates. It's like the last year of post-production ran out of money, but the film didn't slow down. It for better or for worse, sometimes it turns into this sense of I must, in order to get to that finish line. And we're constantly redefining that finish line. Today's a finish line for Unearth. Monday's a finish line for Unearth. But each and every single one of these days are also starting lines in some sense. So.
Yes, so for Turtle Walker, I think the event really that led to the making of the film, or the idea for the creation of the film, was when our director, Dara Malani, she read a newspaper article about this incredible guy, Satish Bhaskar, and she was just incredibly fascinated and curious to learn about this man who was choosing to maroon himself on islands for months, almost, undertaking death-defying quests at times, almost reaching starvation, all so that he could be with these sea turtles, learn more about them, do research about them. And so she was immediately inspired to go and try to find him. And so she was able to track him down, and she found out that he was actually living only an hour away from her, in a little coastal town in India. And so she just saw that as, fate, and went to look for him and had a conversation with him. And that's how this story started sort of developing for us. And of course, she wanted to use this specific protagonist as, building bridges to get people to understand the issues that the film is about, while also have it be a story of hope that wasn't too overwhelming. Of course, outside of all of this, in India we have a very large coastline, but very little of that is marine protected. And the parts that are marine protected are not well enough managed because they're entirely government managed. There's no partnerships, and they're very, very poorly managed. There was very little responses to marine strandings, which were happening very often. Even as early as 2 months ago, we had a mass olive ridley, deaths washing ashore. So there were tens of thousands of turtles washing ashore dead, and that happens because of extreme fishing, extreme entanglement. So all of these issues are happening in India, have continued to happen in India, and our idea was to use the example of this protagonist and this story of hope as a gateway into this issue without it being, as you said, all too overwhelming at one go. So those issues are definitely still going on, and we just wanted to give people a very digestible path into change making. Yeah.
You were talking about the story, the characters, but then also the bigger picture, yeah.
The bigger picture, yeah.
Yes, I feel like there's, in documentary, I've been doing docs for like 20 years, there's the micro and the macro, right? So the characters and what's going on there, but then what that issue represents. And then as a filmmaker, I would usually go try to find an authority in that who can speak to the larger picture in the context of the environment or whatever the case may be, whatever the topic is. So in my film in particular, being on the tribe, it's all on the reservation there, it's all tribal land. And the headwaters of this fishery is being threatened by a nickel mine, a Canadian nickel mine that wants to come in and open hard rock mining, one of the single largest source of pollution in the country, hard rock mining. And the headwaters is where the fish go to reproduce. So if you trash that area, the run will cease to exist. So I thought it would be cool to talk to some of the elders of the tribe, and I was able to track down a Native American woman from the Iraq tribe. She's a judge in San Francisco. She's retired now. But it was really interesting because she could care less about fishing and all those details, but really getting to the core issue of like indigenous rights and the treaties that they signed with the US government. And sort of she got to one of the issues of just how the story we tell ourselves about our relationship with the environment, not to get too into theology, but, the Christian approach of, Genesis, that whole God gave man dominion to rule, right? And the indigenous tribes more like we're here as stewards for the environment. So it was really interesting, and I thought it was important to talk about that, and I got some interviews with some of the people talking about that and going into the history of some of the largest genocide of Native Americans took place in Northern California. So I don't know, putting it all into context. I hope I'm answering your question, but.
No, you are. And because John or Hunter mentioned funding, one of the things I did want to talk about is, because I will say this, all of your films are beautiful pieces of work. Just technically wonderful, just visually stunning to look at. But I also know that costs money, right, to get that. So I'd like if you could talk a little bit about how you went about getting these things funded, because you mentioned you ran out of money in post-production. Like, how can you talk a little bit about what that process was like?
If you don't run out of money, then you're not using it. So,
Okay.
I guess it's always an interesting part of the process. It's got its own way of that you need to be creative. It's not always the way in which we want to spend our time or energy, is finding those who are willing and able to support the films and the stories, but it's fuel in the tank, or juice in the battery, in the instance of our film. And I think that, as it relates to funding, it's like monetary funding is a very important, you can't, Delta Airlines does not accept passion to get on their plane. With that said, I think that when you find the right people, and I imagine that some of you may have experienced this as well, when you find the right people who really care, about the story you're telling and about the mission you are on, then you build that network not only of support and assist in the actual production of the film. For the first year of production, it was an all-volunteer-based crew, people who are like, that sounds awesome, I want to be part of that. I want to support that concept. I want to help you build that film, etc. So, you get to certain points in the process where you say, I don't want to bootstrap this because it will look like I bootstrapped. My background is as a director of photography, so in terms of owning cameras and lenses and lights and being able to strap myself up and go out and shoot, that's obviously a big benefit for us as a film. And same with Obi Strickland, my co-DP on the film. And I don't know that I have a great answer to your question about funding. It's always something that's on the back of your mind. And I guess what I found in fundraising for our film was that it was oftentimes the people that I met, was introduced to, or came across that already cared a lot about the subject that we were focused on. And they said to me, oh my gosh, I'm so happy I found you. And I would be like, like, that's great. Like, thank you. I need your help and your support. So I don't know that I convinced anybody who wasn't already caring, necessarily to put money into the project, but those who care about salmon, care about the environment, care about Alaska, care about sport fishing, about commercial fishing, about, any number of topics that the film touches on. I think that it's always helpful to find those who both believe in your mission and are doing the work themselves, maybe through different avenues, to push forward in these subjects as well.
Well, just bouncing right off that, yeah, all my funding came from nonprofits that already work in that area. But to start it, I had to go, and I'm a DP myself, so I went with my cameras and shot a little sort of teaser, they say. Mine was a short, so my teaser was literally like 3 minutes. But I was able to show that with a pitch deck to various nonprofits that focus on conservation and stream restoration. And they all care, very passionate about this, so I was able to secure funding that way. But yeah, I didn't really necessarily make money. I barely paid for my time, but I felt like it was a worthy cause, and there's a lot more stories up there I want to tell, so it was a great opportunity for me to just get up there and meet all those people and learn more about the area and the issues.
Yeah, I think also similar to both of you, our director, Tara, at first was definitely trying to, reach out to doing a lot of pitch decks right at the start when she ideated this film. And it wasn't going very successfully because there wasn't a lot of space, as you said, for these kinds of documentaries outside of the people who really already care about it. So at first, those routes to funding didn't really work out. So she also went out with her childhood best friend, is actually the DOP on our film. So they would just go out with their cameras, shoot, and that's how the film started out. They got a lot of footage that way. And then slowly, once they got a lot of teasers also, they started using these teasers and pre-release clips of Satish, the protagonist in this film, to sort of hook production partners on, and that's how we slowly got production partners and funding from grants and things like that. And then separately from that, we independently fundraised for our impact campaigns. We didn't want this to be part of our film's budget, given that, as we've been saying, it's hard, and there would be a lot of budgetary constraints if we were raising that on our own. So we worked with nonprofits. We did a lot of fundraising. There's also a law in India for the past few years that makes sure that any company earning above a certain amount has to, for CSR, donate a certain amount of their profits to nonprofits or charities. And so we really used that in our favor and tried to secure funding for our impact campaign in that way. Yeah.
So you mentioned your impact campaign. So now that the films are done, all of your films are done, can you talk about the potential partnerships that you are looking to establish to sort of expand the impact of the film, other than sort of hopefully a lot of people seeing it? What other strategies might you use to expand the impact of the film?
I would say that, back to for one of my first points being that we want to invite people in who don't already care. That's the goal. So with Unearth, you learn a lot, but I hope you don't realize you learned a lot. I'm trying to use storytelling techniques, cinematic styles, etc., that get someone to recommend it to another person based on the fact that it was entertaining, that it was engaging, that they couldn't wait to see what happened. So from there, then looking at specifically impact, I think that something that's super important and helpful in the process is to say, I don't have to be that expert, right? This is a tool that I can offer to the people who are those experts, who are doing that work, and who could really use that support of bringing in new, fresh energy, new, fresh, I keep saying the word support, so supporters to their organizations, et cetera. So I guess I go to the bridge metaphor a lot because I'm just constantly, I'm trying to take myself out of the middle of this. I know about as much about mining as I will ever know, and about as much about it as I would like to ever know. And what I would like to do is use this film to make clear to people that it's a conversation that we as a nation, as a continent, as a planet ought to have, because it's in all of our lives on a daily basis, and that there are lots of really great ideas out there currently. We don't need to reinvent, or I don't need to invent, our film team does not need to invent the systems that would be more sustainable to go about that practice of pulling rock out of the ground. Those are out there. What you need to do is create a public demand for the standards and expectations of the companies that are doing that work to rise. And so, you know, the first part of action is awareness, and that's where I think film sits, is to get people past that point. You know, if you watch a film that's impactful, you cannot really delete that awareness that you now have. You know, when I get in a plane every time now, I'm like, man, can you imagine how much dirt this was at one point? This one plane. You know, there are mines in Arizona that are pulling out 2 billion pounds of earth from the ground every single day, enough to give every human being on the planet 1 pound of dirt every 3.5 to 4 days. I mean, we are amazing what we're capable of, you know, and I try to keep that balance in the process, is while saying we ought to do better, also saying, I can't believe you can do this. This is really interesting and intriguing too. And everybody wants to be invited to be the hero. So I think in film, the more we can position our stories to allow everybody to see in themselves the potential to be that hero, I think the more impactful it becomes.
Yeah, I really like what you said about just unlocking that potential in the viewer and giving them that path into change making or the issues that we're talking about. And I think for us, definitely just we want to really honor Sadisha's legacy, and I think the way we do that is by amplifying voices on the ground and boosting efforts that are already happening with people who already have expertise in the areas of, you know, marine conservation and habitat restoration. So really our entire impact campaign is designed in a way that it, you know, protects either directly turtles or other marine animals, or protects the habitats that they live in, or, like you said, is just providing people with an easy way into change making. So for example, we also have, a GhostNet action cooperative where we've now, through our research that we did in phase 1 of our impact campaign, we found that, and a lot of other studies show that ghost nets particularly are one of the leading reasons for, you know, turtle deaths. And so we're trying to do net buyback programs. We are, you know, trying to find or support technologies that can find these in the oceans. We're trying to lead cleanups that get these entanglement gear out of the water, and that a lot of times involves working with our partners who are dedicated not only to turtle, you know, research, conservation, rehabilitation, but also those who are committed to working closely with local communities and providing them incentives to, you know, doing marine restoration, which is really powerful. So yeah, we also are trying to do education programs now in our phase 2 impact program. So what that involves for us, we're working with Teach for India, which is India's one of their biggest education organizations, and it has reached more than 50 million kids, I believe. And they've been around for 10 to 15 years, but now we're working with them to get Turtle Walker and other, you know, environmental films and shorts integrated into the curriculum, which is really powerful because even though they've been around for 10 to 15 years, as I said, they've never once had any environmental content. And in a country that is, you know, very overpopulated, and we rank, I think, 176th out of 180th on worst biodiversity loss. We have the worst polluted rivers. It's just very important for us that these things get integrated into curriculums, and we are able to, you know, drive that connection and make people feel connected to the story because they're not going to want to fight to protect something they don't care about. So I think that is how we're trying to expand our impact, I would say, yeah.
So you're really having a next generation conversation.
Yes.
Okay, yes.
Hello. Yeah, okay. Yeah, there's legislation, actually, that's on the table with this mining proposal in Northern California, and the nonprofits that I partnered with are just trying to get the word out, raise the awareness, get people to go to their websites, sign the petition, reach out to the various people in those districts that can actually push the legislation through. So that was Senator Jared Huffman, and then Hoyle in Southern Oregon is a whole region up there. So I think it's all about the education, raising the awareness, and then getting people involved, going to these various websites, and there's sort of a call to action in there to sign this petition so that we could push this. Right now it's a temporary mining ban, and that expires in like another 5 years, I think, and then it'll be back on the table. And this company, sure enough, will be back. So they're trying to permanently ban mining in this region. So I think legislation really is what is going to make the change. And people just need to be aware of what's at stake so that they can go and vote.
Yeah, so we're going to take another 4 minutes here, and then if you have any questions, if you want to prepare your question and move yourself toward the mic, we'll be happy to see if we can't get these folks to answer some questions for you. So, what's next? What's next for you all? Not for just this film, but what do you see as the thing that sort of drives the next thing that you want to do? I mean, because again, the films are really wonderful conversations about the environment, but also the power of individuals. That's the thing that one of the things that I took away is is people not giving up and people sort of saying I want to do this. So where after this festival, where's your film going? How are you moving forward with this conversation?
I've got, if you asked me that question yesterday, there's an answer. And as of midnight last night, there's a different answer, which I think has a pretty significant, profound impact on both Ben and my films and stories and what it is that we will be doing over the course of these next 6 months with these films, which is that there was, just by this current administration, an executive order signed to essentially declare an emergency on minerals and to slash and burn the required processes to go about permitting these in a way that is thoughtful, respectful to the communities, and based on science. And at this very moment, right now, the stock of the mining company behind Pebble is up 26% today. And so Impact Campaign is a way of saying, how can a film help problem solve? I mean, if you have weeds in your garden, you get a shovel and you go out and you pull the weeds. If you have a prospective $600 billion to $800 billion to 300, who knows how much mine in your backyard, it's not as simple as walking outside and pulling that weed and getting rid of it. These are efforts that take years and years and years, and maybe lifetimes, frankly, to accomplish for people on both sides, whether you're trying to permit the mine or whether you're trying to say, don't do that here. And so I think one thing is I love hearing the concrete steps that Tanisha and her team are able to do. I love this. It's like, okay, let's get the nets out of the water. Let's, restore the habitat. There are so many concrete solutions. And when you're in those moments of having favorable wind, it makes sense to sail as far and as fast as you possibly can, because you never know, when and where those winds will change and how that will impact not your impact campaign, but the very underlying problem that you are trying to be a part of solving. So I think that our film, it's not sad. It's got a big win in it. It's an environmental film where someone told me last week, when he played at another festival last week, they said, I walked out of the theater and my sleeves had rolled themselves up. And it was the highest compliment I think I had ever received about a film. It looks like, for us at least, those sleeves are going to need to stay rolled up, and hopefully this film is something to bring those reinforcements to the conversation.
Well, I'm gonna let that be the last word before we get to questions, because you take the win, but the fight continues, right? The fight continues and the landscape changes. So we have about 15 minutes or so for questions. So if anyone has a question, please step up to the mic.
Me again. Hi. Wonderful panel. I actually have two questions. So the first one is, I'm curious if you guys have like tactical, tangible examples of innovative, out-of-the-box marketing techniques that you used or will be using to launch your films. We all talk about impact, but if you cannot get people's butts to sit down and actually watch it, then there is no impact. So have you come up with any fun, innovative ways to intrigue people to come to watch your films, or curious about the marketing side of the post-film world?
I feel like for every filmmaker, that's probably the biggest hurdle. You know, making the movie's the easiest part, is getting distribution, getting it out there, getting it on all the streaming platforms. I think the most obvious answer for me would be social media. Everybody's on social media. Everybody has a phone in their pocket. Everybody's on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, you know, all those platforms. And they're all visual platforms, and they're all video ranks the highest and is the most eye-catching. So having the finances, unfortunately, the algorithm doesn't just like push it out there for you. You have to put money behind it. So raising money so you can actually put money out there, put money behind a campaign, and really push our films out there. And those films can be, and those little, using social media as a call to action so that people can see it and be moved, and then dig deeper. There's a click here, you know, go and sign this petition, get involved, you know.
Okay, perfect.
I
So
hope that-
social media is one. Do you guys have any other
Yeah.
like, technical ideas or out of the box?
For me, I think it's an abstract answer, but I think the best marketing decision that I ever made, or that I have made to this point, that we as a team have made to this point, is when we were in the edit process, I said, all right, I'm going to be completely honest with myself. Would I sit down and watch my own movie on a Saturday night, or do I feel like people should watch it because it's a moral obligation? And it took me another couple months worth of work, and Merle's sitting here in almost the front row, and another couple months of support to get my film to a place where I said, I actually think I would recommend this to a friend because I enjoy the experience of watching it. And I think that the more you do the work on the product, the more A, it markets itself, and B, people are receptive to that marketing, because no amount of money we put into a campaign will get that person in that chair if the underlying asset is not something that's shiny, engaging, and effective at being, first and foremost, a piece of entertainment.
Totally. Do you have any? It's okay if you don't. No pressure.
No. I think what both of them said is great. I think one other thing that I guess I keep going back to is, for us, we're very, as I've said, we've been, we hit the ground running with our impact campaign, and I think we're very integrated into a lot of the on-ground work that's going on with, these specific marine issues. And I think as a result of that, it is, we found that it is sort of marketing itself from the work that we've done, and we hope that this continues. Obviously, it is the case, again, where this is already with, there is that it's sparking interest in people who already are a little bit interested in this and do have a stake in this, but we're hoping to just continue these efforts and, just hope that the on-ground, voices sort of help that cause, and then definitely social media marketing. And I think also just using, what we're really trying to do is using, these like little clips and teasers of Satish as a protagonist, and we're trying to really focus on that instead of, zeroing in on the issues, the larger issues that we're trying to communicate, just, giving people a very gripping protagonist that they can connect with, that they feel very inspired by and motivated by, yeah.
I've heard you mention the impact campaign. What does that actually mean? What did you do? Did you go around to schools and show the film? Did you create an event? Did you do beach cleanups? Like, what does that actually mean?
Absolutely, yeah. So as I mentioned too, so we had a phase 1 and phase 2 impact campaign, and the reason we sort of broke it into 2 parts is, at the start we wanted to build something that sort of sustains itself for multiple years. So we co-designed with our nonprofit partners a bunch of strategies. So one thing I mentioned was the Marine Mammal Stranding Response Network that runs in 3 states in India and covers 2,000 plus kilometers in the country. And so what we did is, while there are forest rangers and officials there, they most commonly did not have the training they needed in order to respond to, marine injuries or strandings. And so we designed this program to give them that training. We're also now about to start televet services, so people who do have a lot of veterinary experience can quickly engage with the first responders in order to tell them how to best, the best protocol that they need to use for these strandings. So that was one element of it. And then I mentioned we have the education program that is hopefully going to reach, thousands of kids and talk about these environmental issues. We also have supported and fundraised for an antibiotic resilience study for turtles and other marine animals, and we're hoping to extrapolate the findings to larger, global marine issues. And then we're also working with our nonprofit partners to try and push for a lot of the a lot more marine protected areas in the country, because we definitely need that. And we've been able to get one big, it's called Angria Bank. It's a sunken atoll in India that we're really trying to push to get marine protected. And now we, while working with our partners, we've gotten approval from our state, and now we're just waiting on central government approval. So yeah, lots of things in the making, but yeah, it's really, we're trying to look at it from, the perspective of education, outreach, training, first responding. Yeah,
Super
I hope
helpful.
that gives you a better idea.
Yeah, super helpful.
If
I
I
think
can
that was super helpful. Thank you.
Point out one thing is we started this panel with what is eco-impact? And I think what you've just so eloquently described is using a film, not as the main show, but as the springboard upon which real, meaningful change can happen. So, I mean, making us all look like slackers in the best possible way. And I absolutely love it, because it's almost like, eco-impact, it almost feels like it's like using a film as a commercial to do good. And clearly they've got their ducks in a row, and clearly they're putting the thought into this process, and what are the meaningful steps, and some issues are at different stages of figuring out how do you solve that problem. Some films, I feel like for us, part of our problem, or part of our solutions is identifying that there's a problem, and that's you'll see that, like, the word impact campaign I love and hate simultaneously, because it's a vague description for, how, or it's not very descriptive, because you can't put 2 impact campaigns. It's like, it's more so, how do we as a film and our team want to support and foster and help propagate solutions.
But part of that process is awareness, right?
Of course.
Getting to that conversation where people are like, what? I had no idea. You know, and that becomes sort of the launching pad.
Well, and if I can, just from observation, Tanisha, it's that what it feels like to me when I hear about Tanisha's and the Turtle Walker campaign is that they're on two sides. Ready? They are on the make the commercial about the problem and the prospective solutions, and then they are also on the other side saying, hey, over here, we've got the infrastructure to actually implement these solutions. So you are literally springboarding people from this moment of no awareness into the film. You've created awareness, and then when they land on the other side, you're like, hey, you want to join the action? It's going on, and we've got momentum, you know? So that, I would say, is an ideal example of a film being a strong film because it's getting people in the chair, and it's also got the solutions ready to engage with. And it sounds like there are solutions that for different people who want to engage in different ways, it's ready, it's there.
I just have one more quick one. So we hear all the buzz around storytelling, right? As filmmakers, have you found a sweet spot in which you have to do some doomsday information, right? You have to let the audience know what the problem is, but have you found a sweet spot ratio of which time you allot for talking about the problem to then inspiring people into action? Because I find that there has been some films that I've watched where I've just felt paralyzed after, and then some films I found inspired after. So if you guys have found kind of like how much time you spend about problem versus solution.
I think inspiring hope is probably one of the biggest motivators. I have the same reaction as you have. I've watched some films that are so heavy and it's just so overwhelming, and it's like, you're like, oh God, now what, right? But when you can see, and as a filmmaker, I try to do that, weave that into my story of showing the tribes working with these environmental groups, doing restoration work, and how they're bridging these two worlds that have this very dark history, the Western world and the indigenous tribes, all fighting for the same cause. That's sort of a very positive note. They can agree on that. They can agree on, hey, let's protect these fish and let's stop this mining operation. So I would like to think that through positive inspiration and hope that it would be more inspiring and offer like a glimpse into a solution, yeah?
I think I agree wholeheartedly with that, and to add to it, I would say that rather than having someone tell me about the problem as a filmmaker, finding someone who is living the problem, I don't want to learn about something sad by being told something sad. I'd rather start a morning really happy with a character in a place that is going through a difficult moment where you don't need to force feed me this. You can supplement it, but it's something I'm learning about through the lived experience of someone. So I guess there are times when you need to just, hey, I'm going to clearly state this framework of this issue because you need to understand it in order to follow along with this film. But I'd say the more that you can be with characters who are feeling that, who are working against it. You know, to what you said, if you find someone who can share about the problem while they're creating a solution, then you've gotten rid of that, you know, double dose of sadness. You've paired it with someone who's working towards, and now you're also, you know, building in early maybe some vestige of your impact campaign or something, because you're learning about the ways in which people are combating it while the audience learns about the issue itself. It's not my most eloquent point, but
I think any film in this sort of framework that you're trying to do, you can focus on the problem, or you can focus on the people who are experiencing the problem, and then we get to understand because there's a human connection. And I think your film does a great job of you know, we're aware that this is, but there's a humanity there where I'm like, yeah, that's messed up. Right, so you begin to sort of connect on that level, and you are left very hopeful because it can be paralyzing where you're just like, well, I don't know what to do about that. Yeah. So to be able, though, to meet people and see them walk through this problem and identify with them, it creates an awareness of the problem, but it also celebrates the human spirit in terms of trying to address this problem. And I think that's where a real connection can start to happen for folks. So.
Can I just add one very quick small thought to that? Is that for a long time, I thought I needed to intersperse the reality of the problem throughout the course of the film. I realized after test screening, edit, get it done in the first 7 minutes. Clearly, your film is not about the problem. It's about the people who are on any given side of it. Get the problem out there so that people know what your film is about right out of the gate. So they say, oh, interesting. So then you don't feel this need to like wedge it in everywhere. That way you say, okay, here's my people, here's our conflict, and this is the ride I'm going to take you on as we navigate and explore that at some level. So that was a big one for me, is I had the conflict, like sprinkled in, and that's how you make it sad, is you sprinkle it in, and every time there's a high moment, you're like, yeah, but don't wait. There's a horrible part to this too. Get it in, get it out of the way, and do it in a concise manner so that people understand. And it also gives you then like a counterpoint for your characters in a way that you don't need to always come back to it.
Well, we are out of time, but thank you very much for hanging out with us this morning. Hopefully we should share some things with you that you can take back. And please see all of these films this weekend at the festival. I have seen them all, and I am wholeheartedly giving my recommendation to them all. I left each film a little bit smarter. That's always a good thing. So, thank you.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you
Thanks,
for hosting.
everybody.
Really appreciate it.
Ben, John, Tanisha, Eric, thank you so much. We all got to roll up our sleeves without knowing it, right? Next up, thank you so much. Next up, we have Art for Good with a celebrity panel that we're really excited about. We've got a pro surfer. We've got an underwater photographer. We have a filmmaker. And we also have Taj Mahal. Many of you may not. Next Generation, he literally brought blues to the Americas. He's amazing. So stay tuned. We're going to get going right at 11:45. And thanks so much, you guys. This was great.